Then we found some plants to dye the wool with. Emma picked some privet. David and Richard picked some dock leaves. Back in the classroom we spun the wool into thread. And once we'd washed the wool, we put it into boiling water with the plants. We added some alum to help fix the colour in the wool. And then we left it in the pan for the colour to sink in. An hour later, we came back to see the results. And there was another sample for our Viking wool collection. Some of the parents liked our wool so much that they bought samples from our Viking shop.
Get your Viking wool here, unbeatable prices!
Oh, this is just what I want. Thank you very much.
Buying and selling. That's always been part of the pattern of life at York, and it's not surprising that among the things to surface in the excavations were Viking coins. The archaeologists found lots of these coins. Most of them were made of silver, but not always. Sometimes people would cheat. They'd use a cheaper metal and then coat it with another metal to make it look like silver. And that's what's happened with this coin here. It's a fake, a forgery. Another thing that the archaeologists found was a dye. Not the kind for colouring your clothes, incidentally, but this here. A dye for making coins with. I'll show you how it works. As you can see, there's a pattern already on the die, and I've prepared a few round bits of metal beforehand. There's nothing on them at all. I carefully place one in there, put the die on top, and give it a good whack with the hammer. And there it is. The other side of the coin is made by the impression on this part of the die here. And these dies are exact copies of the ones used by the Vikings, so their coins would have looked exactly like that. But there is something rather interesting, because if you remember, the Vikings used to worship lots of different gods. But when Alfred beat them, he made them promise to be Christians. So if we look more closely at the coin, you will see there is a Christian inscription to St. Peter. But on closer inspection, there's something else. It's the hammer of Thor. So, obviously not everyone became Christian immediately. Some did, but others carried on believing in gods like Thor. And talking of Thor, we never did finish that story.
As Thor and his friends approached the castle, they began to realize how vast it was. Everything about it was huge. Even the dandelions were twice as high as a man. But Thor was determined to show no fear. The door of the castle was open, and he marched boldly in.
Greetings, giants! I am Thor of Asgard, and I have come to challenge you to trials of strength. Which one of you is a match for Thor?
To his dismay, the king of the giants just roared with laughter.
What? A little runt like you? Is this the mighty god we have heard so much about? You disappoint me, Thor. This will be poor sport.
Thor's blood began to boil.
Enough of this jesting. I know what I can do. Let's see what you can do.
Very well, Thor. Choose the first contest.
And Thor chose a drinking match. The king beckoned to the servants, and they brought on a drinking horn full of mead. Thor raised it to his lips, determined to drain it to the dregs. With huge gulps and swallows, he slurped it down. He was sure that he would finish off this horn in one breath. All for nothing. When he set the horn down, the liquid had hardly gone down at all, just an inch or two.
Oh dear, you're clearly not much of a drinker. What would you like to try now? Perhaps a test of strength? See that cat? Just as a warm-up, lift it off the ground.
The cat in question was a giant's cat, and as tall as Thor himself. But that didn't bother him too much. This would be child's play, he thought. But he should have known better. For every time Thor gave a heave, the cat just arched its back. And try as he might, the best Thor could do was to get it to lift one paw off the ground.
Hard luck, Thor. But I suppose it is rather a big cat for such a funny little fellow as you.
Thor's eyes blazed with anger like hot coals.
I didn't come here to play with cats. Let's have some wrestling. That's a proper sport for a man.
The question is, who would make a suitable opponent? I'm not sure you'd be a match for any of my fellow giants. But wait, I think I know who'd be just right for you. Have a look behind you.
When Thor turned round, he saw an old woman hobbling towards him. She was white-haired and frail, and Thor quivered with rage. This was the biggest insult of all. Right, he thought. I'll get this old crone out of the way, and then I can get down to some real wrestling. But the moment he laid hold of her, he knew that it was not going to be so easy after all. The old woman was strong. She was incredibly strong. And although he heaved and sweated and grunted, she didn't budge an inch. And now it was the turn of the old woman to put on the pressure. She grasped Thor in an arm lock, and then with a wrist like iron, she began to force him downwards. Thor resisted with all his might, but it was useless. Moments later, he was down on one knee. The old woman had won. Next morning, Thor and his friends set off for home. After the king had escorted them out of the castle and through the gates, Thor turned to say goodbye.
Well, King of the Giants, it pains me to say it, but you made me look pretty foolish, and it's not often I admit to that.
Well said, Thor. I respect you for that. And now that you're safely out of my castle, I'll let you into a secret. You did much better than you think you did. In fact, you did so well that I'm never going to let you into my castle again. You see, I've been using spells to trick you. It was I who met you in the forest and brought you here. That's right. It was me with the sack. Only I changed my appearance so that you didn't recognize me. And see that crater in the hill there? When I saw you grab your hammer, I placed an invisible hill between you and my head. And that crater is what your hammer did. And I had to use a lot more magic inside the castle. When you were drinking from the horn, what you didn't realize was that the other end of the horn was in the sea. No wonder you couldn't empty it. You were trying to drink an entire ocean. And you had a fair stab at it. And that was no cat you tried to lift, Thor. That was the gigantic Midgard serpent that encircles the whole world. And you didn't do badly. No one's ever got it to lift even one paw before. And no one has ever wrestled so long with old Grandma. For Grandma is no ordinary old woman. She is the spirit of old age. And sooner or later, she brings everybody to their knees. And now I can see that you're angry, Thor. So before you can use that hammer of yours, I'll make one more spell.
And suddenly he had vanished. And